On a February night in 2023, someone cuts a hole in a cage at the Central Park Zoo. Inside is a Eurasian Eagle-Owl named Flaco, 13 years old, massive, a wingspan nearly 6 feet wide. And in the next few hours, for the first time in his entire life, he steps outside, not into another enclosure, into Manhattan. Zoo staff are terrified, not because Flaco is dangerous, because he has never once, in 13 years, caught his own food. Every single meal of his life has been handed to him, already dead by a keeper. He has never hunted a living animal, not once. Experts assume the outcome is inevitable. A bird raised entirely in captivity, suddenly alone in one of the most crowded cities on Earth with zero experience catching prey. Most people expect him to be dead or desperately weak within days. Weeks pass, and Flaco is still alive. Then a birdwatcher spots something impossible through a camera lens. Flaco, on a tree branch, a dead rat in his talons. Nobody taught him how to do that. No parent owl, no zookeeper, no training of any kind. Somehow, entirely alone, this bird had figured out how to hunt. Today, we're going inside one of the strangest survival mysteries New York City has ever witnessed, and the question scientists still can't fully answer. How does an animal do something it has never once been taught to do? To understand how strange this story really is, you first have to understand what Flaco's life actually looked like before that night. Eurasian eagle-owls are massive, among the largest owl species on the planet, a wingspan that can stretch close to 6 feet, a weight that typically ranges from 3 to 9 pounds, powerful enough in the wild to take down prey as large as small deer. Flaco had spent 8 years at the Central Park Zoo, one of the exhibit's most popular residents. Visitors came specifically to see him, and every single day of those 8 years, his food arrived the same way it had likely arrived his entire life. Prepared, placed, ready to eat. No live prey, no stalking, no catching anything that could run, fly, or fight back. Hunting is not simply an instinct that switches on automatically the moment an animal needs food. For many predator species, hunting is a skill, refined and practiced, often taught directly by a parent during a critical window early in life. Flaco had never had that window. He had never needed it. For 13 years, survival simply meant waiting for a keeper to arrive. Then, in a single night, that entire system disappeared. On the night of February 2nd, 2023, someone deliberately vandalized Flaco's exhibit, cutting through the stainless steel mesh surrounding his enclosure. By morning, zoo staff discovered him gone. The vandalism appeared intentional, and to this day, the person responsible has never been publicly identified or arrested. Zoo officials moved immediately. Search efforts began right away, with staff and wildlife experts trying to locate and recapture Flaco before he could get hurt or hurt anyone else. For a bird raised entirely in captivity, sudden freedom is not simply a joyful escape. It's an emergency. Every basic survival skill most wild animals learn young, avoiding cars and buildings, identifying safe roosting spots, recognizing which prey is catchable, Flaco had to encounter for the very first time as an adult, alone, in the middle of Manhattan. But something began to shift in how the zoo approached the situation. Flaco wasn't just surviving. He appeared to be adapting. Bird watchers in Central Park began tracking Flaco almost immediately. Word spread fast. Photographers with long lenses, amateur birders with binoculars, people simply hoping for a glimpse. And then came the sighting that changed everything. Flaco was spotted with a rat clutched in his talons. Not zoo-provided, not placed by a keeper, caught. For a bird with zero documented hunting experience, this was extraordinary. Central Park and the surrounding streets of Manhattan happened to host an enormous population of rats and pigeons. An accidental but abundant food source for a large owl, suddenly forced to fend for itself. As sightings of successful hunts continued, zoo officials made a decision nobody expected. They called off active recapture efforts. Flaco appeared to be thriving on his own, and pursuing him further risked more harm than leaving him free. New York City fell in love. Flaco became something close to a local celebrity. The city's mayor publicly called him one of New York's flyest residents. An unofficial social media following tracked his every move. Strangers who had never cared about wildlife before found themselves checking daily updates on where Flaco had been spotted. A bird who had never lived a single day outside a cage was now, somehow, thriving in one of the most chaotic urban environments on the planet. Here's what genuinely puzzled experts watching Flaco's story unfold. Hunting isn't purely instinct. For many raptors, successful hunting techniques are refined through observation, trial, and error, and often direct guidance from a parent during early development. Flaco had missed every single one of those learning opportunities. So how did he do it? Researchers and wildlife experts point to a combination of factors, though nobody claims to have a complete, certain answer. Part of it is likely raw instinct that never fully disappeared. Deeply wired reflexes like silent flight and extraordinary night vision that remain intact even in a bird raised in captivity. Eagle owls possess specialized wing feathers that muffle sound during flight, allowing them to approach prey almost silently, an adaptation that doesn't require learning. It's built directly into the structure of the feather itself. Part of it may be simple necessity combined with trial and error, compressed into an unusually short time frame. An animal facing genuine starvation has powerful motivation to experiment, fail, adjust, and try again, rapidly, in a way that a well-fed captive animal never has to. And part of it may simply be that Manhattan, strange as it sounds, offered close to ideal hunting conditions for exactly this kind of unplanned experiment. Slow-moving rats, accustomed to the presence of humans and largely unafraid, in extremely high density, essentially a city that had unintentionally built a training ground for a predator with almost no relevant experience at all. But experts are careful to note something important. Instinct alone doesn't fully explain what happened. Flaco didn't just catch one lucky meal, he sustained himself successfully night after night for more than a year. If this mystery is fascinating you as much as it fascinated the researchers watching it unfold, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this story reach more people. What made Flaco's story so captivating wasn't just that he survived, it was that an entire city got to watch him figure it out in real time. Birders documented his movements almost daily. Central Park, the East Village, rooftops, and fire escapes across the Upper West Side. Each sighting added another small piece to an unfolding, very public experiment in survival. People who had never paid attention to urban wildlife before found themselves emotionally invested in an owl's nightly hunting success. Not because Flaco was rare, or endangered, or scientifically unprecedented in some formal sense, but because everyone watching understood instinctively what he was actually up against. An animal that should not have been able to do this. Doing it anyway, Flaco eventually settled into a rhythm, familiar perches, consistent hunting grounds. A daily pattern zoo staff and wildlife rehabilitators continued monitoring from a respectful distance, ready to step in only if he ever showed real signs of struggling. For over a year, he never needed that intervention. A bird with no hunting experience, no parent to learn from, and no preparation whatsoever for life outside a cage had built, entirely on his own, a functioning life in the middle of Manhattan. This story does not have a simple, tidy ending. In February 2024, just over a year after his escape, Flaco died after colliding with a building on Manhattan's Upper West Side. A later examination found traces of rat poison and a pigeon-related virus in his system, factors that may have compromised his judgment or health in his final days. It was a devastating loss for the people who had followed his story so closely. Flowers and photographs appeared at the base of a tree in Central Park he had frequently visited, a quiet, informal memorial for a bird that had, in his own way, become part of the city. His death is a reminder that Flaco's year of freedom, however extraordinary, was never risk-free. Rat poison, building collisions, and disease are constant, serious threats to any bird navigating a dense urban environment. Threats that exist whether an owl was raised in the wild or in captivity. But his death doesn't undo what he accomplished. For more than a year, an animal with no relevant experience, no teacher, and no reasonable expectation of success built an entire life from nothing in one of the most demanding environments any wild predator could face. Scientists still don't have a complete, certain explanation for exactly how he did it. Instinct, desperation, an unusually forgiving city, most likely some combination of all three. What remains is simpler and harder to fully explain. Nobody taught him. He figured it out anyway. So the next time you hear about an animal doing something it was never taught to do, remember Flaco, a bird who spent 13 years waiting for his food to be handed to him, who was suddenly, without warning, given a freedom he had no experience surviving, and who, somehow, alone, figured it out. Not because someone showed him how, because he had no other choice, and he tried anyway. If this story moved you, subscribe to Birdhearts so you never miss the next incredible mystery hiding in the bird world. And tell me in the comments, do you remember hearing about Flaco when his story first happened? I'll see you in the next one.